In 539 BC, the Persian army marched into Babylon, and nobody fought back. The gates opened from the inside. Babylonian priests welcomed the invading king, Cyrus, as a liberator, not a conqueror. Stranger still, a Hebrew prophet had already named this king by name over a century earlier, and called him something no other pagan ruler in Scripture is ever called: God's shepherd, God's anointed, Mashiach, the same word later given to the Messiah himself. Why would Israel's own Scriptures hand that title to a man who never worshipped their God, never entered their covenant, and never set foot in their temple until the day he ordered it rebuilt? There are 3 details here most readers skip past. 1. The exact royal title Isaiah gives Cyrus, lifted straight from Israel's own covenant language. 2. The timing. Cyrus named specifically by name before he was born. 3. A clay cylinder dug out of the Babylonian sand in 1879, sitting today in the British Museum, recording in Cyrus's own words what kind of king he claimed to be. Here's the background you need. In 586 BC, Babylon crushed Jerusalem, burned Solomon's temple, and dragged Judah's leadership into exile, the wound behind half the Old Testament. Less than 50 years later, Persia crushed Babylon in turn, and Cyrus took the throne of the very empire that had enslaved Israel. In 1879, archaeologist Hormuzd Rassam, digging through Babylon's ruins, pulled a barrel-shaped clay cylinder from the foundation of a temple wall. Written in Akkadian cuneiform, it records Cyrus's own account of his conquest and, more importantly, his policy afterward, restoring displaced peoples to their homelands and reinstating their gods and temples in the cities Babylon had scattered them from. Ezra opens with the Judean version of that same policy, decades before archaeology ever confirmed the pattern. Cyrus issuing a decree that whoever among the exiles wished could go up to Jerusalem and build the house of the Lord. Now trace the pattern properly. In Hebrew Scripture, Anointed One was a covenant language reserved for Israel's own kings and priests, men set apart from within the family of promise, poured with oil, sealed into an office. Cyrus is the only foreign king in the entire Hebrew Bible ever handed that title. In Isaiah 45:1, that is not a slip of the pen. It's a signature move. Go back far enough in the text, then you find God repeatedly willing to work through outsiders to protect his insiders. Joseph, rising inside Pharaoh's court to save his own family from famine, Pharaoh himself unknowingly preserving the very people who would become Israel. Cyrus is that same mechanism, replayed at the scale of an empire. Then look closer at Isaiah 44:28, who says of Cyrus, "He is my shepherd, and he shall perform all my pleasure," saying to Jerusalem, "You shall be built," and to the temple, "Your foundation shall be laid." A king named before his reign, assigned a task before he could refuse it or even understand it, and the cylinder is the receipt for that assignment. A pagan record, written for pagan political reasons, that happens to match the shape of a Hebrew prophecy almost exactly in substance, if not in name. One honest flag here, because this channel doesn't hide the weak points. The cylinder itself never mentions Jews, Judah, or Jerusalem by name. It speaks generally of restoring peoples and shrines, which was fairly standard Mesopotamian royal messaging for the era. The Judah-specific decree comes from Ezra and Chronicles, not from the cylinder directly. The 2 texts corroborate a pattern, not a sentence, and the dating of Isaiah chapters 40 through 55 is genuinely disputed among scholars. Some place the writing during the exile itself, rather than a century and a half earlier. Don't build your confidence on the manuscript dating argument alone. Build it on the pattern that runs underneath it, because the deeper point was never really about a date, it's about a title. Cyrus was called Mashiach, but only ever on loan. He freed a nation from geographic exile, and then he died, and the freedom he gave eventually needed freeing again. The real Anointed One arrives centuries later, and he applies that same language to himself on purpose. In Luke chapter 4, Jesus stands up in a synagogue, reads Isaiah's words about proclaiming liberty to the captives, and tells the room the line has been fulfilled that day in him. Cyrus rebuilt a temple made of stone that would eventually fall again. Christ became a temple that cannot be torn down twice. So the real question was never whether a pagan king can serve God's purpose without knowing it. History already answered that one. The real question is whether you're still waiting for a Cyrus to come and free you. when the greater Anointed One already opened the gate from the inside.